When most people think about the Holocaust, they think what a tragedy it was, and that the majority of the people that it occurred to were Jewish, when actually the majority were mostly Polish or Soviet Union prisoners of war. And that, I just think, is such a surprising fact, because this main idea about the Holocaust is that it happened to mostly Jewish people, when there are so many other minorities that it occurred to. One minority that the Nazis always hit were their own citizens, who were Freemasons, clergy, various people who might have been even suspicious of any kind. And they'd just send them off to camps, and they'd mark them with a red or green triangle showing that they're either a criminal or a political prisoner.
Next, we have the Jehovah's Witnesses, which were also prosecuted. And they were a Christian group that they had different views on Christianity than the mainstream priests around that time, but they were still prosecuted against the Nazi Party because they refused to comply with the mandatory military services with the Nazi Party, and they rejected all the authority and ideology that they put out there, and they were viewed as suspicious for not affiliating themselves with the Nazi Party at the time. And then we also have homosexuals that were also persecuted because the Nazis didn't believe that, they thought it was inefficient for them because they could not produce more offsprings, or they couldn't help society with just not creating any more children so they can have a bigger army. So they were forced to wear a pink triangle so they can be viewed in public and be prosecuted.
And when Germany invaded Poland, the long-standing hatred of Poland after World War I, when they had to give up land to Poland, the long-standing hatred was finally released, and they took in many ethnic Polish people into their camps just because they were Polish, and because they were Slavic and were deemed as subhuman by Nazi ideology. Then later on, when they invaded the Soviet Union, they took all the prisoners of war they could get and sent them off to camps, like Auschwitz or other places. And they did this just because they were Slavic again, and because they were fighting for the Soviet Union, a beacon of communism, which stood for almost everything the Nazis were against.
Next we have Gypsies, which their main region that they roamed around was in this region from the Greece and Turkey all the way up to Germany. They were prosecuted because they weren't efficient for society, because they did not identify under any one government because they traveled around so much, and they were also viewed as subhuman because they believed that their race wasn't as superior or up to the standards of the Aryan race. And they're also very against their just whole lifestyle of roaming around and getting what they can, and they just thought it wasn't efficient for society.
And lastly, political prisoners made up about 10% of the deaths during the Holocaust. They were all the people that were democratic, communist, socialist, any of those groups that opposed Nazi ideology during their rise and after they took control of Germany. They were sent to camps just to silence them, to remove opposition, and also to create more unity in Germany, when actually they're just sending all opposition they could away. All these groups were forced to wear different colored triangles to show in the camps what they were and who they were exactly. So when they were selecting who to gas, they could take those into consideration easily.
Like immigrant workers that were found in Germany, they were forced into labor camps instead of execution camps because they viewed them as they could exploit them being there, and they were forced into labor camps.
These many minorities help influence what we can learn about the Holocaust, because it is just a major thing to find out that Jewish people were not the only people persecuted. you need to look beyond what history classes tell you and maybe dig deeper to find out about more about topics in history to find the truth.